This video is brought to you by Surfshark. In my previous video, I talked in depth about my thoughts on the recent madness in the driver market, including Alonso's move to Aston Martin, and then also the Piastri saga between Alpine and McLaren that is still ongoing. The one aspect that I didn't talk about as much is the Ricciardo side to all of this. Although there is nothing official yet, with McLaren wanting Piastri in for 2023, that means that Ricciardo is going to be out. And it also means that Ricciardo might end up at a fourth different team in 6 years. I will admit that I'm using the phrase fourth different team quite loosely in this context, because even if he ends up at Alpine, which technically is just a rebranded Renault, the point I'm trying to make is that for a driver of Ricciardo's quality, 4 different team moves in 6 years is abnormal whichever way you look at it. Before I get to Ricciardo, however, I do want to talk about the McLaren angle as well, because I feel as though they've gotten a little bit of backlash with the way that they've dealt with this situation, and I'm actually going to defend them. Ricciardo, whichever way you want to look at it, has underperformed over the past season and a half, especially in 2022 because that midfield has been so tight with different drivers and different teams being strong from race to race. It seems to have really amplified that gap between Ricciardo and Norris. After 13 races, Daniel is currently 12th in the championship, with Lando in 7th. But it isn't just the positions that are miles apart. The points they've scored is also startling, with Lando outscoring Daniel 76 to 19. Zach Brown and Andrea Seidel clearly have reached a point where they feel that they don't see Ricciardo getting better in 2023. They've tried the arm around the shoulder approach, then around Monaco we saw the kick up the backside approach, with Zach Brown talking openly about mechanisms in Ricciardo's contract which could see him leave. And ultimately, the performances have been the same, inconsistent. The performance per dollar that they're getting from Ricciardo just isn't good enough. And that's something that you definitely can't say about Surfshark, who are the sponsor of today's video. Surfshark is a virtual private network that allows you to be fully protected on the internet by changing your internet IP and hiding your location. There are countless benefits that Surfshark provide, like protecting your data, blocking ads whilst you're browsing, and also allowing you to access content that might not be available in your country. So for example, during F1 preseason testing, I was out in Bahrain, and whilst I was out there, I wanted to catch up with all of the Premier League games on the Sky Sports channel. But because they don't have the broadcast rights to show the highlights outside of the UK, those videos just weren't there. No problem, however, because with Surfshark, in only a few clicks you can connect to a server in the UK, refresh the page, and now I can watch all of the videos that weren't available. That's just one of many benefits, and by using my promo code AUDACE, or by clicking the link at the very top of the description, you can save 83% off and get an extra 3 months for free as well. On top of that, Surfshark also has a 30-day money-back guarantee if you decide to change your mind. It's a great deal, so make sure to check them out if you're curious, and thank you again to Surfshark. The McLaren MCL36 has also been a very confusing car to gauge as well. The first race was a complete write-off as they misjudged the cooling demands of their brakes, leading to a compromised package which took away performance. Since then, however, it's been a relatively strong but inconsistent car from track to track. According to technical director James Key, its biggest weaknesses have been its levels of drag and also the sensitivity to changing track temperature. Last year, there was a lot of talk about how Ricciardo's driving style was incompatible with the MCL35M. This year, however, it's not as simple as saying that the car still doesn't suit Ricciardo. Of course, there's going to be some underlying McLaren DNA, but both Lando and Daniel have struggled. However, Lando is still the one to extract more out of the car. For McLaren, they can't continue with Ricciardo performing like he is, especially on the money that he's earning, which is a factor. He's not being paid number 2 wages like a Bottas or a Perez, and that financial dynamic does have an effect inside the team when people see the gap between him and Lando. McLaren also are in a tricky spot because 2024 is their big year to show what the new McLaren is really made of. That will be the first car built using the brand new wind tunnel and simulator, and that's the season where McLaren should be on a level playing field with the top teams and should be fighting for Grand Prix wins. Therefore, in 2023, they need stability so that they can use it as a preparation season for the real test in 2024. What they don't need is another contract saga and a driver who might not be there for the following season. That's why they're so keen on Piastri and why they want to get their long-term driver lineup sorted now and not on the verge of such an important season in 2024. It's clear that Zak Brown and Andreas Seidl now want to cut their losses. Going after Piastri when the opportunity was presented to them doesn't just weaken their direct rivals in the future, but it also gives them a sought-after young prospect who could have a long-term future with the team. Also, in terms of meshing with the car better, if Piastri does make his debut for McLaren like Norris did, then the McLaren cars and their unique characteristics is all he'll ever know, which might make it easier for him to adapt because it would just be the norm. Although McLaren are getting into yet more contract drama after their IndyCar fiasco, Zak Brown is doing what's best for his team. If Piastri told him that he's available to sign and actively wants to be a McLaren driver, the team are not doing anything wrong in signing a driver who they think will do a better job than Ricciardo. And let's not forget that if Ricciardo does agree to leave, McLaren will be writing him a reported $21 million check, so from their point, it's not as if they're not giving any compensation. As I mentioned in my previous video, Ricciardo is still the person who ultimately has to make the decision on him leaving. There's no magic dollar threshold that would release Ricciardo automatically. If Ricciardo really wanted, he could just dig his heels in and stay for 2023. But when you know that the team actively wants to sign another driver, that creates tension and a bad team dynamic on top of all of the other issues that he's already having with driving in the first place. Ricciardo moving for a 4th time in 6 years seems almost a formality, and at this point he really is becoming a journeyman the way he's been bouncing around teams without finding a home where he's happy and where he can extract the most out of his driving ability. The Red Bull move to Renault I understood. That was the big risk move that could have paid off. Lewis moved to Mercedes and it worked. Fernando moved to McLaren and it didn't. What was interesting about the next move to McLaren is that, because of how the pandemic affected the season in 2020, it meant that Ricciardo literally decided to leave Renault after just 1 season. That's how long his big project lasted before he wanted out. Going back to Alpine, who used to be Renault, would definitely be awkward at first. I mean, to give a real-world example, it would literally be like going back to an ex-girlfriend. And actually an ex-girlfriend that Daniel cheated on after he chose McLaren over them. The problem for Alpine, however, is in messing around Alonso and fumbling Piastri, their driver lineup will be weaker next season regardless. But in the position they're in now, a tainted Ricciardo is literally still their best option. After the initial awkwardness, I still think that this benefits everyone. McLaren can close the book on the Ricciardo chapter, and Ricciardo can go back to try and find his form in the last place it actually worked. Now, even though the team is similar, Alpine is different from the last time that he was there. A different team principle, a different management structure, and even Esteban Ocon is a completely different driver to the one that Ricciardo beat in 2020. There is no certainty that he'll be able to do that again. He could also move to Williams or Haas, and to be fair, Ricciardo and K-Mag is a combination I really would like to see. But Alpine is the best bet for him to try and regain his mojo. There is also an interesting scenario where Alpine continue to be better than McLaren, and Ricciardo actually outperforms Norris and McLaren after they kicked him out. Alpine for Daniel is not some dead-end choice, it's actually one that still has an upside if he can get back to his best. Whatever team he goes to, his stock has fallen harder than Bitcoin in the last 2 years, and the real question is not where he's going to go, but how good he still is right now. He'll be able to get a 1 or 2 year deal purely just off his reputation and the credit that he still has in the bank. But this will now be his final chance. Whichever team he goes to next, even if it is Alpine, will Ricciardo get back to the level of performance we saw just a few years ago and still show that he can be one of the best drivers on the grid in the right environment? Or has the McLaren experience just exposed the level of driver that he really is? Well, there you have it, another video in the bag. Once again, a big thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to use my code ALDAS or check out the link at the very top of the description to get 83% off and an extra 3 months for free as well. And once again, a big thank you to Surfshark. Now, if you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to give it a like and also subscribe to the channel. That would be massively appreciated. And I'll see you in the next one.